Everybody, welcome to today's REA9 Miniseries webinar, Session 1 on adding contacts and properties to your database and tying them together. So today we're going to be talking about just the basics of adding records on a manual basis to your database. And we'll kind of pick up from there and in our next webinars talk about other ways of getting records into your database. But the most basic way of adding records to your database is just to manually add a record, and you can always accomplish that with the New Record button on the toolbar. So if you see my screen, there's a big New button. It looks like a blank piece of paper with a blue plus, well, a blue background, white plus button at the top right of it. If you drop that down, you'll see the different options for adding new records to your database, either a contact record, company record, property record, sales comparable, space, lease comparable, and project. So you can basically add any type of record directly from that New button. And so we're going to actually start off, I'm going to actually add a property first and tie the owner to that property. As a lot of the times, you don't necessarily need to add contacts directly, although adding contacts directly does come up, especially with contacts that like are buyers that you don't specifically have a property attached to yet, so potential buyers you'd add like that. But we're just going to start with properties just to kind of show an easy way to add a building as well as the owner directly from the building, and then we'll add a contact to multiple companies, so we'll start from there. So I'm actually going to open up my properties first off by clicking on View and selecting Properties. And that will open up my Properties table. And I want to add a brand new property to my database. So to do that, I'm just going to hit the New Record button and select Property. So that's going to bring up the Property Details window where we enter the basic information for the property itself. First off, we have the property name, so we're just going to call it the Awesome Retail Center. So we're going to be adding a retail center building to our database and put in the address here. I'm just going to make it up as I go along. So I'm just going to enter the basics here, 1700 Main Street. If you notice with properties, it automatically splits up the numeric portion as well as the street name. So you can either enter the information into the numbers, direction, and street, or add it directly to address 1, and it'll actually automatically split it out. Next up, I'm going to add the zip code. Now, when adding zip codes to your database, when you type it in, if I go to the next field by hitting Tab on my keyboard, it's going to automatically fill in the city and state for me. So whenever you are adding records to your database, you just need to have the zip code and it'll automatically fill in the city and state, which is great because then you don't have to worry about ever misspelling like the city. Like sometimes you'll have like, St. Clair as a city could be spelled S-A-I-N-T, it could be spelled S-T period. So that makes sure that the information is entered in consistently into your database. And entering information into your database consistently is definitely important because it helps when you're doing searches later on down the road. So that's just one of the many ways that REA can automatically standardize your information in your database so you never have to worry that the information is typed in incorrectly. So we've got the basics for the property, the actual building address. On this screen, this is actually also where we'll be tying in the owner of the property, as well as if you had a site contact, like an on-site property manager or an agent for the property, you can add those directly from here as well. But for right now, we're just going to add an owner, and it's going to be a brand new contact that we don't already have in our database. So down here in the contact section, we have 3 drop-downs, one of which says owner, which is the one we'll be focusing on right now. So if we drop down that owner box, we have a few options. One, it comes up with Miller and Hennings. The reason it comes up with that one is because in another window in my REA database, I happen to have that contact record open. So if you happen to have the owner record open in the background, that'll show up there. Otherwise, you'll either want to use Select Contact or New Contact, depending on if the contact record is in your database already. In our case, we're going to be adding a brand new owner that doesn't have a contact record in our database, so we're going to hit New Contact. However, if it's already an owner that you have in your database that might own multiple buildings, you can do Select Contact from here to add that owner and tie them in without having to add a brand new contact record and duplicating your entries. So right now we're just going to do New Contact, and that's going to bring up with the Contact Details window. This is the exact same window that you'll get if you were to hit New and select Contact from your toolbar at the top. So we're kind of seeing all the different screens that you would see when adding new records to your database: properties, details, contact details, and we'll even see company details here in a moment. So we're going to add a new contact, and we're just going to name this person Roxanne Alexander. So I'm just going to, if you notice, when I enter the full name, it automatically split out the first name and last name for us. And for example, if we have a designation, it'll recognize the designation, anything after the comma, and actually search out the first name and last name for us and fill those into the appropriate fields. Next, we can go down here and add a company record. So we're going to make a brand new company record. It's going to be called Alexander Holdings, LLC. And just enter an address real quick. First Street, Suite 303, and we'll make her in Seattle. And just enter the basics here, 206-555-1212. And I'm going to do one more, Alexander at alexanderholdings.com. So we're entering the basic information for the contact here. Couldn't really get more simple than this. We just kind of fill in the fields, hit tab to go to the next field. So once we filled out all the information, when we hit OK, it's actually going to give us a pop-up message asking if we'd like to create a new company record for this contact. So REA is a relational database and adds information in multiple places. So whenever you add a contact and you have a company name and address in the with section there, it'll automatically ask you if you want to create a company record for this contact. That makes it easy to have multiple contacts at the same address, so you don't have to keep typing in the same address each and every time you add a new contact. So we're going to be adding a few contacts to Alexander Holdings LLC here over the course of this short webinar. So we'll just hit yes on that message, and this time we'll now get the company details window. This is the same window that would come up if we hit new and selected company. So we're seeing the different windows all kind of on top of each other and adding to each of the different databases, all from the comfort and security of our properties database. So just whenever adding company, it automatically fills in the company name and address that you filled in on the contact behind there. And then it also automatically fills in the phone number and email. And one thing I like to do whenever adding those is I like to make them generic. So for example, if the office main line is 555-1200, I would just enter that for the company here. And what I like to do for the email, because it'll automatically fill in the email address for any of our contacts, I like to look at the format of the email. So I see that it's got the first initial, last name at alexanderholdings.com. So what I like to do when on the company record is instead of using one of the actual email addresses, I like to do F last. So that'll tell me anytime I go to add a contact to this company to put in the first initial and last name in there and then at alexanderholdings.com. So it's just kind of a placeholder to remind me whenever adding a contact to the company to add it with the first initial and then the last name. If it was in a different format like first.last, I would type it in like that, first.last at alexanderholdings.com, or however the format is. But for right now, we'll keep it at F last and just kind of remember it like that. Hit OK. And it'll ask if you want to fill in blank fields from the company record. I always just hit no on this because we just added the company record from the contact, so there's never really any reason to fill in information from the company to the contact going back the other way. We already filled it in, so I'll just hit no on that. So that'll bring us back to the property detail screen that we're adding the property and the owner for. We'll now see that owner, Roxanne Alexander, as well as their company there. And just hit OK, and we have our new property, the Awesome Retail Center at 1700 Main Street, and we have it tied directly to the owner contact record here. And so down in the link section, we'll see the link to the owner record. And if we double click on that, it'll actually bring us directly to that contact record that we just added a moment ago. So give me one moment here. And so now we have that contact record up, and in the links on that contact, we'll see the property right there. So it automatically creates those links every time you're adding records. If you're adding a property and add an owner to the property, it's going to automatically generate that link. So if you're on the contact record later on, you'll see that property and any other properties that you've tied that owner to. So if we go back to our properties here, go to View Properties, and we want to add another property to this owner, let's say she also owns 7355 Reseda Boulevard in Reseda, we can just double click in this box here, And right now we see the owner is Suzanne Harris. Let's say we want to change that to Roxanne Alexander. She just bought the property. We can drop this down, and we could just select it right from here, but just because I want to use the select contact, we can click on the select contact and search for her right from here. I'm just going to type Rox, type part of it, and hit OK. And that'll change the owner on the property record to Roxanne Alexander. If we click on the owner tab here, we'll now see that there. And we see that it actually does keep the link for the previous owner as well. So whenever changing owners like that, what I like to do is I like to go to the link section here. I like to right click on the link and choose edit. And in the description both on from and to here, where it says owner, I like to just change this to previous owner and do the same thing here. That way, when we go back to the record later on, we'll see on 7355 that Roxanne is the owner and that Suzanne Harris is the previous owner of that property building. So now if we click and go back to our contact, we now see both of those properties under Roxanne's contact record. So you end up with one contact for each of your owners in your database linked to the multiple buildings they own. So that way, if you're doing mailers, you don't have to worry that you're sending out to the same person 5 times because they own 5 buildings. You can do all of that directly from the contacts and only have one contact record per person. So you don't have to send out mailers to multiple people, email blasts to the same person over and over again, and so on. So that's how you add a property as well as the owner of that building. So now let's say we want to add some more contacts to Alexander Holdings LLC at 1500 First Street. Well, we can double click here on the company to bring up the company record in our database, or we could use the search, choose company, and type in the name here. So I can just type in Alexander and that'll show up. So once you're on the company record here, it's very simple to add multiple contacts to that company record. So when you're on the company, on the left side of the screen, you'll see an Add Contact button. If we click on that, it's going to bring up the contact details window, but some of the information is already going to automatically be filled in for us. We'll see it automatically filled in the address, the phone number, and the email address. So we're going to add a new person here, and we're going to name this person Henry Huffman. And we're going to make him an investor, and we're going to put in his personal work address, so his actual address is 1213, let's say. And this is where that F last thing comes in. So I can see right on this record that it's going to be F last, so I can just remove this and put HHUFFMAN and fill that in from there. Once I hit OK, we'll now see multiple contacts under the company record for this one company under Alexander Holdings. You'll see all the different contacts at that same address. So now if you want to add multiple contacts at different addresses but the same company, so let's say Alexander Holdings LLC also has a San Diego office, we can add a new company record and tie contacts into that building as well, or that office as well. So if we hit New and go here to Company, the way that we tie multiple buildings together that are with the multiple company records together that are in the same organization but different locations is using this organization field. What you want to do is make sure that you type the organization exactly as it is on your other company record. So in this case, Alexander Holdings LLC, and I said that I wanted to add a San Diego office. So let's say they have an office at 1400 Kettner Boulevard, Suite 240 and 92101. But just hit OK on that. That'll bring us up to that new company record. But if we click on Org Chart, we'll now see that there's multiple addresses under Alexander Holdings LLC. We see one record for 1400 Kettner Boulevard, and down here under the contact section, we see that there's no contacts at this office. If we click on the First Street Seattle building here, we'll see the 2 contacts under there. So these radio buttons determine who you're seeing. Right now it's set to the company record, so we only see contacts at the one company that we're clicked on right now. If we clicked on organization, it would show everybody at each of the different locations here. I'm not really going to jump into subsidiaries. That's kind of outside of the purview of this webinar for now, but you can tie multiple company records together by every time adding the company record, type in the exact same organization name, character for character. So if I did Alexander Holdings LLC and forgot the comma, it would be a different company record. So you just have to make sure that you're typing in exactly. What I do is I just will go here to the address, double click, and just highlight the organization, right click, and copy. That way I know that I'm not going to be mistyping it in there. So now if we want to add someone to that Kettner Boulevard office, if we click on that one and then click Add Contact, it'll fill in with the details for the Kettner Boulevard office automatically. So let's say that office is run by somebody named Frank Francis, because I'm completely unoriginal. So then we hit OK. We now have one person at the Kettner Boulevard office, and we see under the company, that's the one person at that office. If we click on First Street, we'll just see the two at that office. However, now if we click on Organization, it'll show us everybody within the company itself, regardless of which office they are at. So that's a way to add multiple contacts within the same organization, but at different locations. You just want to, each time you add a new company record to your database, you want to make sure that when adding the company record, you type the organization name identically. And then finally, I wanted to talk quickly about adding spaces and tenants to your buildings. So we're going to go back to our building that we just added, and we called it the Awesome Retail Center at 1700 Main Street. So let's say we wanted to add some spaces and tenants to this building. Well, to add spaces to a record, there's multiple tabs here on the property record, and one of them says Spaces. This is where you can add multiple leasable spaces to the building as well as the tenants in those buildings. Now this is as opposed to for multifamily buildings where you would have a rent or have a unit mix. That's actually done under the Units tab. So for multifamily building, you use the Units tab to add the unit mix. So you can have the unit type, number of units, square footage. But for like office, retail, and industrial properties that have that can have tenants in the multiple leasable spaces, you want to add those as spaces right from here. So to add a space, go to the property that you want to add the space on. So in this case, 1700 Main Street. And I want to just right-click in here, and I can hit New Space. And that's going to bring up a window that says Space Details. You might notice a trend here. Each time you're adding a record, it brings up a window that says whatever database you're in, Details. So that's pretty much consistent across the board. We'll just add this to Floor 1, Suite 100. Say that it's 1,500 square feet. And down here, where it says Tenant, this is how we can tie either an existing contact or a new contact or company record as the tenant in that building. So if I go here and I do Select Contact, I'm just going to do a search and pick someone at random as our tenant. Let's say Joel McCabe here with the McCabe Company. You just double-click there and tie that person as the tenant. So you can always use these drop-downs to either select a record to tie in as like the tenant on the space, the owner on the building, and so on, or you can use it to add brand new records by using new contact or new company from there. So I'm just going to finish off. Let's say the lease commenced today, and it'll actually be expiring in 2018. So that's 72 months. No, that's actually 60 months, 5 years. Say it's $227 per square foot, and there's 1,500 square feet. 3,405, and we'll just add a lease type of double net. So I'm just going to hit OK, and we'll now see that show up as a line directly on the property record. So in here, you'll end up generating a rent roll of your building, kind of giving you an idea of the different spaces within the building. If we actually go to Joel McCabe's contact record now, go here to Joel McCabe. Under the Tenant tab, we'll now see his lease information. It automatically fills in the lease commencement, expiration, term, type, square footage, rent per month, and so on. And then here under Space, we can actually see the space that they are leasing there. And we see that it automatically created a link both to the property record and to the space record. So anytime you want to add spaces to your buildings, that's done through the Spaces tab here on the building record itself. Other information that you can enter on the property record is the generic information is generally on the General tab. So like the building class, construction type, the actual square footage of the building, and so on. And those kind of scroll over to Detail, which will have more stuff that'll be geared either towards, like specifically towards retail buildings, such as anchors, signage, traffic count, stuff that would specifically be for industrial, such as dock doors, truck doors, power and rail service. So this will have like the more specific information. Now, if there are fields here that you're not going to find yourself using and you want to change the field name, you can change any field in REA by simply right-clicking on the field and selecting Properties. That's going to bring up Field Properties. And on here, you can change what it says for captions. So, for example, if I wanted to change exclusions to something else, literally, I'm going to change it to something else, all I need to do is change what I have there in the caption. And that'll change what the actual field name is here on our screen. So you can do that for pretty much every single one of the fields in your database. So everything on the General tab, you can change each of these. And then there's also these user fields and logical fields, which give us an additional amount of fields to add directly from there. So user fields are 12 fields that are specifically set aside just to have a spot to have additional fields. One thing you might want to notice when changing field properties, though, is when you right-click and go to Properties, there's a field type here that says Data Type. That tells us what type of information actually gets inputted onto that field. So in this case, it says INT, which stands for integer. So if you remember from your math classes in middle school/high school, an integer is basically any whole number over 0. So in any integer field, you can only enter whole numbers. So like for building size, that's perfect. You generally don't put like 5,000.5 as your building size. You would just round it to 5,001 in that case. So that's one of the different field types, and there's a few different types. There's integer. If we go here to acres, we'll see another one. This one's decimal. So that allows us to enter in a number with a decimal point. So if we tried entering 5.55, that would go fine into acres. However, if we try to put that into building size, which is a integer, it'll automatically round it for us. So that's something to keep in mind when changing fields around, is that field type. The field types are not able to be changed in REA, so you'll have to find a field to use that matches what type of information you're going to put in. So if you're going to be entering a field that always has a numeric value, you might want to use a field like vacant square footage and change that if you don't end up needing that. If you need something where you can enter in both letters and numbers, you want the field to show something like this. It says varchar and then has the number of characters you can enter in. Varchar standing for variable character. So that means you can enter any type of character directly into that field. So just kind of something to think about. And also for checkbox fields, you see they're called bit. That means that they're basically not fields that you can really enter any information onto directly, but you can just check the checkbox for. So like for sale and for lease are examples of that. And then logical fields gives you an additional set of 24 of those. But I'll be talking more about logical fields as well as groups, which work very similarly to that in a future one of these webinars. So this will actually be one of our shorter webinars, as we're just doing the basics of adding records to our database today. So we'll be building up on that come Friday. We'll be talking about other ways of adding information to your database and kind of how to have that all tie together. On Friday, we'll be talking about specifically how to add information from Outlook and Constant Contact. So with Outlook, you're able to synchronize your contacts so you can get your contacts directly from your phone using Outlook as a middleman into your REA. Whereas with Constant Contact, that gives you an easy way to find information on the web. So like let's say you're on a client's website and they have their name, address, phone number, and an address block on there. It gives you an easy way to just get that information right off the website and in as a contact record on your REA database. So that's what we'll be talking about on Friday. And then on Monday, we'll be talking about importing data again, but this time from Microsoft Excel. So I'm kind of starting off with some of the more complicated things. Importing data is one of the more complicated things. However, it's also something that most people do within their first couple weeks of owning our software. So I kind of wanted to start off with the more difficult things after the first really basic one, just to kind of, as that tends to be the most common route that people take. They'll have to, because your database isn't really useful unless you have information in it. So we'll be starting off with talking about how to enter the information, and then on Wednesday we'll start talking about how to find and manipulate that information in your database when we talk about groups and queries, scheduling in the dashboard, and projects. So we're going to be meeting up every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from now until, looks like, probably January 30th. Yeah, January 30th. We'll be having our last one of these mini-series, so that'll be every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. And these are being recorded, so you can always check them out again by going to Help and selecting Training Videos. It will take a few days for each one of these to be up. I'm not sure. We're probably going to be getting putting our focus on getting our next release out. So it might be a little bit longer than usual, but if you click on there, that'll bring you to our website here. And if you click on webinars, that'll show you our previously recorded webinars. We have the old mini-series there, which not much has really changed. I just kind of wanted to have new recordings, so I did and changing the topics around a little bit. But you can always check out these webinars here that are previously recorded, and these will be uploaded as well. We'll be completely changing each of the different sessions here to match this webinar's session route. So I just want to thank you all for joining me. That is all the time I have for today. But if you have any questions at all or have any unrelated to the webinar questions, you can always just give us a call at 858-729-0154, and you can hit the number 2 for support. We'd be glad to answer any questions that you have or help you out with any issues that you have along the way. You can also shoot us an email at support@gorea.com. So we'll be meeting again on Friday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. And again, we'll be talking about importing in from contact capture as well as synchronizing with Microsoft Outlook. And I'll also talk at that time about how to set it up to where you'll get your emails automatically into your database as well. So it'll be kind of talking more about getting information into your database. So we'll spend the first 3 sessions on that and then kind of go from there. So again, thank you all for joining me. I hope you all have a fantastic day. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to give us a call. And I hope to see you all again on Friday morning. Take care and have a great day.